Aloha, and welcome to another Candid Conversation. Today we're joined by Alex Kraft. Alex has been a contributor to our blogs a couple of times already, and this past week he wrote on the subject of adaptability, which has received a really strong response. So I thought it'd be appropriate if Alex would be able to expand on it a little bit. Good afternoon, Alex. Glad to have you here.
Good afternoon, Ron. It's great to be with you again.
So what in the heck has caused everybody's interest in this adaptability? What were you trying to do? Because you sure created a firestorm.
Well, I hope I can live up to it.
I'm sure
With my future articles. Adaptability is one of my favorite themes, and I really enjoyed, researching it and writing about it for your site. Basic concept, it means to me being flexible and paying attention to your market and the things around you, such as your employees, your customers, your competition, and being self-aware to be able to, be critical of your company and how you fit in that environment.
That's a pretty powerful statement in and of itself, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I remember a lot of the responses that people had to adaptability, and I likened it to the Marines. And I understand your grandfather was a Marine, and you kind of learned that at his knee.
Absolutely. He was like a father to me.
That relationship, grandparent, grandchild, is really special, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I was very fortunate. Some in my family think it's just because I was the oldest, but I was fortunate that we lived close, and I spent every summer with my grandparents. He taught me how to play golf. We had a very special bond.
It's kind of wonderful. So adaptability. The other thing about it that I liked in your introduction was it's being aware externally. So many people get caught up in their own headlines and their own minds and heads about almost narcissistic, but not that far. You're reflecting your customer's statement or your marketplace statement, aren't you?
Yes. And I don't know. I don't know what necessarily drives the opposite, being rigid. But from my experience, I think one of the things that does drive it is the being afraid to admit that you're wrong, or I think like that is really what drives it to me. Is like, we've all been in meetings with, and from being with customers if you're doing a good job or not, if you're truly paying attention. And I just don't understand. I mean, it comes from number one, too, like caring about improving. And if you really do want to be the best, and if you really, really are competitive, I mean, these buzzwords that everyone says all the time, if you really care about improving and being the best, then you can admit when you're not performing well. Because if you care, then you fix it. How many times have we been a part of the same meetings or in the same situation where nothing has changed? And that's the kind of stuff that drives me literally insane.
That's why I don't work at dealerships anymore. It's a characteristic that I never understood. One of the things that I learned early was that the competition that you have as an individual is never with an outside world. It's always with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the person that you truly acknowledge as your competition, all the rest of it is helping you. And one of my favorite expressions is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? If we're not failing, if we're not making mistakes, we're not doing anything. And that's boring. It's remarkable, isn't it?
It is. And also what I love about that statement is that when you're focused on yourself, that's obviously what you can control. Like, we always get wrapped up in what the other guys are doing. We can't control that, And so there is an empowerment that comes from just focusing on your effort and the things that you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Another, basic philosophical approach: before you can be of value to anybody else, you have to be of value to yourself. So if you're coming into a room to sell something, to greet someone, to deliver something, whatever it is, you're not there for you. You're there for them.
Right.
If you're trying to sell a machine to a customer, you're not there for you. You're there to satisfy what they need to get them to the point that they'll sign on the line.
That's right.
And unless you listen, unless you adjust, unless you adapt your discussion, I never liked the word presenting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more interested in the word positioning. I'm going to position my offering to you, to your business, so that you can see how it would fit into your business, rather than me rattling off some canned presentation, which so many people seem to do still.
Yes, definitely. And I've had to really kind of reteach myself how to sell since starting Heave, and it's been very eye-opening. It's very I wish I would have done it while I was still in the dealer world. It would have opened my eyes to different things. But I did it now. So, but that's one of those core principles, is that number one, it might not, your solution might not be for everyone. That is incredibly powerful. And I think selling has changed too, right? It's not about convincing. And I think like the old school world of selling was like, who can convince the customer, who's not going to take no for an answer. And it just creates so much resistance with customers. And it's more about, like you're saying, it's positioning. It's first understanding what the customer does and what they could hire your product or company to do for them. You have to understand that first. Otherwise, if you just use the canned presentation, you might be wasting your time and their time.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I did teleselling back when I was in university, and they'd give us a couple of pages of the phone book, a script, a chair, and a phone. And I was selling newspaper subscriptions, and it was kind of interesting. So today people call,
Mm-hmm.
and they rattle off the circumstance. It's all canned, and in many cases it's a robocall.
Mm-hmm.
If the traditional buying methods, where a salesman and a buyer, a salesman and a customer interact, are the same way they were 20, 40, 60, 100 years ago, it doesn't apply anymore.
No.
I don't know if it ever has, but it really doesn't apply now.
No, and it's the definition of being adaptable, right? You have to be aware that the customer journey and the customer expectations are completely different. So if you train your sales team, like in the equipment business, if you hire people, put them in sales, and then tell them to just show up on job sites, that's not going to work that well, I don't think. You have to be adaptable.
Well, very rarely, unless it's a one machine owner, very rarely is the buyer at the job site.
Correct.
Just as a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of adaptability that's interesting is what I call delivery systems. We have the internet, we have faxes, we have telephones, we have walk-ins, we have drive to the job site, we have going to the corporate offices, we go to a demo field. We have all of these little pores, openings in the wall,
Mm-hmm.
that we have to satisfy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many salesmen are that adaptable to all of those different, quote, delivery, what I call delivery systems, sales systems.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that becomes even more problematic.
Yeah, today there is a tremendous, and I think another way of saying it is access. There's so many different ways to access
Yep.
people.
Better word.
And that's positive, and it can be negative. It can be, because there's so many different routes and access points, you can be drowned out, and so It's once again being adaptable. Like this is the best access point for these customers. This is the best access point. Once again, not everybody is the same.
Yeah. The other thing that we seem to be running up against is a lot of people succeeded based on what they perceived to be the relationship that they had. It's harder to hold a relationship in this world. The customer is choosing who they want to deal with, irrespective of the relationship. And I go back to your very first blog, which was saving time for customers. It resonated to me in a manner that was, we were providers of information in the old days. We were the guardians of all of the technical specs and everything else. Today, the customer knows as much as, if not more, than what the salesman knows. That by itself causes us to adapt.
That's right.
I don't even need to know the equipment to sell it anymore.
That's true. People don't like to admit that. But I always, the whole relationship thing is funny to me, because yes, it is necessary. But what makes me laugh about it is usually it's though that phrase is mentioned by people who already have all the relationships. So what they're kind of saying is, all right, well, these are all my customers. Like, how are you supposed to start a relationship? And that's one of the funnier things when you ask the successful salespeople in this industry, tell me about this customer. And they usually have a really good story about how they never could get in the door at that customer, and then things, broke their way. But the guys who are talking about relationship are the ones that don't want anybody else to start building one with that customer.
That gets me to what I believe is a real serious schism right now, break in the world, in our industry. We have baby boomers, my generation, 55 to 75, that are running the businesses, and we're risk averse. Don't change anything. You don't want to jinx this. I'm happy the way I am. Don't get there. And then the 25 to 45-year-olds, which is where all the action is, they don't want to hang around. Let's get going here. Right? And those two groups, they really can't talk to each other. Metz Kramer, the three of us did a podcast a while back, and we want to do another one. Made the comment that I think it's in the high 90s of people that do the purchasing in America are under the age of 45. So if you're not in that ability to communicate with them, you're dead. Again, adaptability. My generation, if you've heard this a lot because you're on the younger side of this, those guys, they want to go to the corner office right away. They don't want to work for it. They're not like we were. Come on, you got to earn your spurs, right?
That's right.
You ever heard that?
Different variations, right? I used to walk through snow with no shoes on to school and all that stuff. These guys have it so easy.
Well, and being in Florida, you don't understand what that means. In my generation, it wasn't barefoot. It was we had flight boots.
Okay.
And they were heavy suckers. So when the spring came, it was like you were Mercury with the wings on your ankles and you could really move. But it's kind of silly. How we try, the people that have the relationships, that say that relationships are important, they're the older folks, the ones that have got the relationship.
Yes, exactly. And they don't want anyone else to come in on their territory.
Exactly. So they have a book. We have Salesforce, we have call reports, we have all this stuff. They have a little book that has everything in it, and that's mine. That's right. It's not the company's data, it's mine. You're breaking that whole thing down. You're taking that apart.
Yes, a little bit. But we're giving tremendous opportunity to our users to start relationships.
Yeah, I wasn't attacking it. But you're right. You're substituting timeliness, adaptability, responsiveness to the client's needs, using a technology platform.
Correct. And what's so funny is we've had certain cat dealers use it, and the power of a customer placing a request on Heave and getting an immediate quote with a cat logo is incredible. And that's the funny thing, is that when you talk to customers, and that's kind of what led me to start the business. Was I was always kind of amazed that like a brand like Cat, I looked across, I'm like, they have the leading market share in North America, yet it's still not easy to buy a cat. Like, why wouldn't it be? If you have 20-year relationships with customers, why wouldn't you have a vehicle where a customer could just be like, all right, send me 5 more of that. Send me 3 more of that. Yes, they might make a phone call and do that, but why wouldn't you have that type of capability for the larger market? Because anyone in the equipment business, the longer it takes to get that deal signed and funded, the more chances for it to go wrong. It's happened to me 100 times, even just from a customer signing a contract and it takes 2 weeks to get like the finance approval and the funding, you've now lost the deal. Somebody else has come in, given a better price. And I just thought it was kind of crazy.
The thing the thing you're talking to there, Alex, as we talked beforehand, the number one need of a buyer is responsiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not answering the phone. It's not walking in the door. It's completing everything in the transaction, isn't it?
It is. And that's what customers want. I think in one of the blog posts I wrote, I've been in the industry, now 18 years. I have relationships with customers, and one of my good friends is a contractor in this local area, and he used to be a salesperson. And I mean, we've talked. I actually asked him in the very early days, like I showed him kind of like a prototype of Heave, and this is what I think it could look like. Do you see value in this? And so he was helpful in kind of shaping the early product. And he confessed to me, he put in a couple of orders the other day for rentals. And he said, he's like, I used to be a salesperson. I was trained to go cold call. And he's like, I own this company. I don't have time to see salespeople. He's like, we're fighting for every job that we can. And so I get in the office super early. I look over a couple things, and then I got to go drive our jobs. And then if I'm not on our jobs, I've got to go be bidding work and trying to build relationships with, the GCs. He's like, and so he was explaining the whole process to me. And he's like, so if I ask a salesperson for a quote, a day will go by, 2 days will go by, then they'll call me and say, hey, let's meet for a beer. I have 2 kids. I don't want to meet for a beer. But just give me the number that I asked you for 2 days ago. And so, that happens quite frequently. But here you have a customer saying, look, I just want the communication to go this way. And that's the vehicle that we can provide. Any dealer can use our product, and we can help them communicate much faster and more efficiently with the customers on the terms that the customers want.
The resistance you're receiving, I think, in large part is because it's alien. Everybody's got a process. Everybody's got a methodology. They're very comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
So here you come, and you're challenging that whole methodology.
Correct.
The salesman that is now the contractor, it's a perfect illustration, because he can tell you both sides of the street.
Exactly.
And again, your ability, he helped you shape the original product, adapting to what he said to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been about that. What do you want? What do you need? And it's up to me then to be able to satisfy it, or have the integrity to say, I think you'd be better served if you go to Mary, or you can get a better answer for that question if you go to Joe.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you earn respect, I believe, and asking the customer then to check your website, your tool, because it's neutral.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get a quote that's got a Cat logo on it. I'm going to get a quote that's got a Komatsu logo on it. I'm going to get a quote that's got a Volvo, all of them. And the more you have that happen, the more successful it is.
100%.
So how do you get more people? How do you get a dealer to adapt a dealer to adapt their market approach to use your tool?
It's a work in progress. What we have to do is prove value, and we can't force dealers to move faster than what they're comfortable with. And so, what you have to, like any tech company, you have to find what people refer to as early adopters. And there are plenty of those people. There are plenty of those salespeople, plenty of those dealers who do see the value immediately. They see it connects all the dots for them, and we've been able to find those people. One of the things that I was blind to when I was in the dealer world was and before this conversation, Ron, had just showed me actually how to look at some analytics tools on Google Analytics. So, but it just shows you that I was not the most active on social media prior to starting a tech company. But I didn't know how many salespeople use Facebook Marketplace to list machines to sell. And so I started paying attention to all these different channels. Obviously, that is the definition of an early adopter.
Yeah.
So I started calling every salesperson I ever saw list a machine for sale for their dealership on Facebook Marketplace. And it was the easiest conversation you can imagine, right? They already were looking for other avenues. They wanted to get their name and their equipment out there in other ways as opposed to just showing up at contractor sites.
And those men, I assume most of them are men, but they were, I bet you, all of them under the age of 45.
Yes, you are correct.
That's another thing that we're playing with now. This transition from one generation to the next, from one technology to the other. My grandson is 16, so he has not existed in a world where he was conscious without a cell phone, without Google. Hell, those things, I mean, that was Buck Rogers stuff when I was 16. What is this?
It is nuts. I have 3 children myself. My youngest is 7. And it's amazing to me. We'll go somewhere and my 7-year-old will be like, Dad, what's the Wi-Fi? It's insanity. But so in the early days of Heave, like back to your original question, how do you get more dealers to see it? And this goes part of me being adaptable and me trying to learn is that I spent too much of my time early on trying to convince people that I knew to use Heave. And I stepped back and I realized I'm talking to salesmen who are 55 years old, because that's who I knew, and who have been very successful selling equipment the old way. And I realized that that's probably not our user. And that's okay. And then I started searching, Facebook Marketplace, and I started searching LinkedIn. And there are an incredible amount of salespeople under the age of 35 in this market. And that's who we just started connecting with. And within 60 seconds, they're like, yes, I want to use this. This makes a lot of sense, and it will help me sell and rent more equipment.
And its price point is that it's not that much of a risk if it doesn't work for you.
No, it's not at all. And, and so we get compared to certain companies in the market, and our price point is in line, and you don't really lose out on anything by trying quoting deals on Heave. There's nothing to lose, really. I mean, it requires really no effort whatsoever. So we've built in, and this is part of the development of our product that I'm proud of, is so when we first came to market, a salesperson would get an alert, they could quote a deal. And by the more salespeople we added in an area, deals were getting quoted faster. But still, it was done manually. And that's not necessarily the best experience for a customer, because if you think about it, a customer is looking online, they're looking for something right now. And so what we did was we built the capability into our product where we can tie into a dealer's inventory. And so a customer goes online, requests a quote for a specific machine. If a dealer has a machine that matches, like an hour range, the size class, it is immediately quoted to the customer, immediately with the salesperson's information. So now the dealer doesn't even have to quote the deal manually. It just is quoted immediately. The salesperson gets a copy of who the customer's information was, phone number and email, and we're off and running.
So that opens up another avenue that's appealing to me. The dealer business system, the computer systems that the dealers use, need to cover the fundamentals, the parts, the service, the sales, the rentals, the finance. But there's a whole bunch of stuff like Heave. I'm going to call it like Salesforce because that's pretty widely understood. That the dealer business system folks, the software developers, forget about it. Make your platforms perfect for what they do, but let these adjuncts, business intelligence, telematics, Heave, I can connect right into your computer and you have all of a sudden access via the internet to all of these salespeople and customers wanting to buy machines.
Yes.
Their current business system doesn't do that.
No, because it's a business system.
Exactly. It's not a sales system.
Correct.
Or sales facilitation system, whatever. I don't know what the right terminology would be. But I believe that's the future of problem solving. We're going to find specific tools to satisfy specific needs, and they might be small markets, they might be big markets, it doesn't matter. But that's IBM and Honeywell and Xerox and all the old days of computers. They're not here anymore.
No.
It's kind of interesting.
It is. And I love when people try to compare us to like a CRM system and we're not at all, although some people still try to classify us that way. But the main difference to me, and I'm glad that you kind of talked through that track, is that the Heave platform is outside in. It is customer driven. CRM and business systems, they are dealer out. So a CRM just contains data that's entered by people at the dealership. I called on this customer, and we all kind of know CRM is the arch enemy of the salesman. They don't want to enter stuff in there, but that's the major difference, is that the only way the information gets into our system is because a customer went to our site and started the process. The customer said, I want quotes on this. I want to rent a machine. I want to buy this machine. That is the most accurate data. It's customer driven. It's not, I've so many instances, you have a salesperson who's the notorious sandbagger. So they don't want to show all the deals they're working on because they don't want to be asked about it. But they showed they're working on 2 deals, and then at the end of the month, they sold 8 machines. And then the other guy who's not necessarily performing well, so he wants to show that he's on more deals. So he puts in 15 deals he's working this month, and he sells none. And so that's like the age-old problem of sales management in our industry, where you can never get an accurate forecast because it's getting manipulated one of 2 ways.
Well, what you're talking about is not a sales tool. It's an employee monitoring tool.
100%. 100%.
As long as it's perceived to be that, the salesmen are going to respond in those 2 manners and every other manner in between. It's not going to be helpful. And,
correct.
It's things like call to close ratios. If we had purity, I'll put a chip under your skin, so I will know everywhere you've been and how long you've been there. And at the end of the month, I'll find out if there was any action on any of those calls. But, again, that's monitoring the guy. Think back, if you will, Alex, to when you started and you're selling equipment. Who trained you to do the job?
Oof. Are you asking me that question?
Yeah. Was there anybody?
Not really, no.
Exactly. Do you know of any formal sales training that is applied in the industry?
No, and And I will say that when I ran the dealership, we didn't have a really good formal training program either. So I'm not saying that I was any better.
Oh
It's
no,
just, yeah.
no, I'm not trying to get there. What I'm
Yeah.
trying to get there is we treat employees like tools in a toolbox.
Mhm.
We don't treat processes and methods like tools in a toolbox. We allow that to be personalized.
Right.
And George is really good with relationships. He knows that guy so well. He was the best man. I remember
Mhm.
using a film on sales training that was put out by Pioneer, the hybrid seed company.
Mhm.
And their model was to have a farmer sell to his neighboring farmers. And they found that that model didn't work well all the time because Joe the farmer was trying to sell to Henry the farmer, and Henry's wife used to date Joe. There's no way that was going to work, right?
Right.
But you had to go high up in the helicopter to acknowledge, wait a second, we got some flaws with this. The relationship business in selling is important. I want to have a relationship, a good relationship with everybody that I deal with and do business with. I don't disagree with that at all. How I serve them, how I produce what they need me to produce, that's a different story.
Mhm.
You're allowing people to do it the way the customer needs, like you said, from the
Right.
outside in.
That's right.
Adaptability, very powerful. That was a heck of a blog that really resonated with a lot of people. It's going to be interesting to see how you follow it up.
Well, pressure's on, I guess.
Yeah, right.
But I do. Uh, I find it very interesting the people that are at the top of their game and they are adapting still. That's what kind of started it for me, because it's those people that are never satisfied, that always want to stay a step ahead. Like that's the really interesting part to me, and that's what kind of I wanted to zero in on.
When my dad was still alive, we lived in Denver, and I think it was 1983 or 84, and he's sitting on the fireplace, and we're having a glass of scotch, and he looks at me, and I mean, this is 30 something years ago. He says, Ron, I don't understand you. I'm sure a lot of fathers and sons have that kind of discussion. I said, okay, well, what's the trouble? He says, well, you're never satisfied. I said, Dad, you can always do better. You can always do more. Why would I be satisfied knowing that there's more to be able to do? And today, Alex, I think this is even more pertinent. Too much is being done by too few on too many things. And as a result of that, how skillful and how able they are is never shown.
Mhm.
Because everything they do in a day, they could have done better had they had more time.
Mhm.
And that drives me crazy.
Yeah, I would agree.
And everybody's compromising on their, I got to get this done. That's okay. I should have spent another 20 minutes. I just did an agreement with a lecturer. And in the first paragraph, I don't know how often I'd read it, I didn't even have her name in it. Such and such and such lecturer. Goodness me, what's the matter? So my wife finally pointed it out. She says, did you realize you didn't lose her name? Oh, okay. Well, we're lucky enough that we can take the time.
Right.
The salesman don't. He's got to get to the next guy. He's got to make this close. He's got to get to the next month. He's got to get to the paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to adapt.
Yes. And there are tools available today that can help.
What is also revealing to me, and I hope people recognize this, the ones that are successful are the ones that will adapt the fastest. Because they recognize they don't have all the answers. They keep looking for another bullet, another tool, another aid. Young ones do it by nature because you have to. You got no choice. You got to learn.
That's true.
Older ones would become selective about what you want to learn.
Yeah, it took me a while to be okay with failing. It's another buzzword of failing, but yeah, it's just being comfortable in your own skin to where you don't have all the answers, and you just learn over time. And I mean, I've been on the receiving end of some very tough customer conversations too. And what you learn is that when you accept it, those meetings go a lot better than if you're going to sit there and, dispute or, try to minimize the situation.
I always used to make myself comfortable with that situation where you had those tough discussions. I just happened to be the one that was nearby. Several, you know me well enough by now. The people that I deal with on a regular basis know me a hell of a lot better. But some guys would rant and they'd vent and they'd do all the rest of the nonsense. And when they took a breath and took a break in the action, I'd ask them with a smile on my face, "Do you feel better now?" And that would cause them to go up the wall and cross the ceiling one more time until when they settled down, I'd ask it again, and they laugh about it, and then we get past it. But objections are positive things. Mm-hmm. Failures are indications that you're trying.
Correct.
There's nothing wrong with failing.
No.
Running back fumbles, that's a failure. I got hit. Holy mackerel, I was out cold for 5 minutes. What are you talking about? I hope that people recognize in this discussion, meandering as it has been, it's been adapting as we've gone, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's Domino's was fascinating. I didn't know that much about Domino's before I wrote that article.
Yeah.
Loosely knew. It's funny, everybody knows the pizza tracker and all that kind of stuff, but to research where that company is today is remarkable, absolutely remarkable. And they're viewed as a tech company. They make pizza. Well, it shows you.
Yeah, when it started out, I used to ask people, what business is Domino's Pizza in? Pizza business. No, that's not what it's in. Do you remember what it was originally?
I don't.
Transportation.
Was it really?
McDonald's. What business is McDonald's in?
Real estate.
That's right. Everybody thinks hamburgers. It's not true at all. And we can go all the way down the line. Amazon didn't make money for 10 years. Everybody laughed at them. Look at them today. So, are we selling machines? No, we're not.
No.
We're selling a hole in the ground, a trench, moving the dirt, or whatever the heck it is. So, it's so Heave, putting the buyers and sellers together, putting it out there that I'm looking, mm-hmm. being able to connect right into a dealer's inventory and smack back a quote like right now. Mm-hmm. The dealer doesn't even know what's happening. The salesman doesn't even know what's happening. It's remarkable. Don't stop. Keep pushing.
We're already working on the next few innovations with our product that I'm excited about. That, yeah, it comes from customer feedback. It comes from dealer feedback. We added 3 or 4 key features just for the salespeople who use our product, because they kept mentioning certain things about what I call it constructive, not what they didn't like. Because we don't have a company unless dealers and their salespeople sell and rent more equipment with our help. I mean, it's pretty clear. We're not in it to just take a fee for them to have the same revenue with the same amount of machines moved. It has to work for us to be successful. And so we listen, and that's what helps our innovation.
And it shows. Thank you, Alex, for the time today and for the blog on adaptability. Also the previous ones and podcasts. And as I said, I'm looking forward to the next one. How do you want to wrap this up? I love it when I give you a poser that causes you to think.
And it's such an easy one. But no, I enjoy the conversations that we do have. It's always a joy to come on and talk about the business. I've always been, it's funny too, because we're talking about just the youth movement in the industry. And one of the things that always stood out to me in the very early days when like Metz Kramer introduced me to you is that here is an individual who's not under the age of 40, who who is constantly talking about the innovation and the need to be adaptable, the need for change. You're in the small percentage of the industry. I've always been very impressed by that.